Here is the text for Chapter 1 of the Ragnarok Saga, right here in the chat. Chapter 1. The words cold anchor. The air was a brutal blend of crushed pine needles, the raw, deep dampness of the earth, and the faint, stinging scent of the ancient cold. It was the breath of the world's root, a sanctuary not built by man's hands, but grown within the granite veins of the Germanic mountains. The chill was not of winter, but of cosmic stagnation, a constant pressure that demanded discipline and silence. The entire place was a solemn hymn to the cold, hard truth of the cosmos. The beauty of the inevitable cycle. Light here was not the joyful blaze of the sun, but a cold, pale blue-white, bleeding from an unseen source high above, deepening the pockets of shadow, chilling the crystalline frost on every surface, and drawing a faint, unsettling glow from the carved runes. This ethereal illumination served to remind all within that they operated outside the warmth of Midgard's sun, bound instead to the laws of Yggdrasil's shadow. A low, ceaseless thrumming accompanied every footfall, a deep resonance echoing from the bedrock, the sound of word itself being monitored and measured, ensuring the threads of destiny remained taut. The Fylgja Covenant lived by a single, unyielding truth. The cycle cannot be broken. They viewed the chaos of Utengard as merely the necessary grindstone for the order of Inengard. They were not warriors who sought the glory of a changed tide, but preservers of the path, ensuring all reality adhered to the necessary, predetermined journey dictated by the Norns. It was not despair, but a profound form of cold-eyed discipline. They understood that the fiery end, Ragnarok, was not a catastrophe to be averted, but simply the prerequisite for the rebirth, the purification by ash that guaranteed the world's renewal. Their physical presence was a deliberate homage to this philosophy. They wore the naturalism of the runes, clothing that eschewed ostentation for utility. Heavy layers of earth-brown wool, thick leather, and shaggy fur, hues that melted into the deep forest shadows. Their armor plates were minimalist, crafted from polished, bone-white ceramic materials harvested from the world root itself, a pale contrast to the deep, aged darkness of their environment. The severity of their purpose was manifest in their gleaming weapons. Bone-white blades and rune staves, etched with futhark that pulsed with a cold inner light. These were not iron-forged tools of war, but elemental conduits, designed to channel the raw, disciplinary power of the frozen earth and air. The Hall of Unwavering Faith. In the central Hall of Word, the spiritual and strategic power of the Covenant rested with the matriarchal Norn Circle, three ancient vulvas who continually wove the threads of fate. Presiding over this council was the High Vulva Urther, fate itself, a woman who stood as a still point of perfect order and temporal certainty within a landscape of potential chaos. Urther was always motionless, her eyes fixed on things unseen by mortal men. She did not raise her voice or allow her commands to travel on the common air, which she considered too mutable. Instead, her pronouncements materialized, glowing, carved futhark runes that formed instantly, hanging in the frigid air before dissipating like frozen breath. This silent text was an absolute command, the very language of destiny being written in real time. The wellspring must run clear, the rune stated, demanding the immediate purification of any threat to the cosmic flow. Their singular purpose was to balance and enforce law, a systemic, non-emotional mandate. They existed to strike down any faction whose actions threatened to create an existential imbalance in the great stream of time, viewing all temporal resistance as a sickness to be purged. The Covenant's ultimate power was the cold, unyielding law of nature itself. Their primal strength was a total mastery over the elements. They could draw the base elements from the very air and fuse them instantly and perfectly, transforming a plume of mist into a diamond-hard blade of ice, condensing mere air into an immovable wall of stone, or heating a shallow stream to unleash molten magma. This control over the land was not magic, but the discipline of physics enforced by pure will. Their internal defenses were equally specialized. Immediate shields of solidified frost to repel kinetic attacks, and psychic wards designed not only to paralyze an intruder physically, but to inflict a crushing wave of soul-weary despair, targeting the enemy's will and commitment to their flawed existence. Crucially, their strength was drawn from siphoning the very atmosphere of the world root, meaning every shift to extreme weather, every blizzard or electrical storm, did not weaken them. It amplified them exponentially. The Fylgja Covenant existed to demonstrate that elemental law was the one unbreakable structure governing the cosmos, preparing the worlds for the necessary, inevitable cycle of rebirth. They were the guardians of the end and the architects of the beginning. Chapter 2. The Anti-Order Pyre, I. The Covenant's cold machine. The world root clearing held the sharp scent of crushed ozone and ancient deep earth cold, a thin, clean burn over the centuries-aged pine. Squads of Vulva Guardians moved through the heavy, sight-stealing mist in a precise, fluid dance of combat. Their movements were never fueled by rage. They were a function of stoic duty, an unyielding ritual, driven by the knowledge that their actions were merely the will of the Norns made flesh. They lived a disciplined, self-imposed austerity, rejecting all comfort. They viewed physical pain as a necessary fire to forge their will, a relentless process that ensured their minds remained sharper than any iron blade. Their uniform was the runic naturalism of the mountain itself, heavy layers of forest green wool and earth-brown leather, reinforced by a dense, seamless inner shell woven from bone-white fragments of the world root's crystalline stone. This armor was not meant to deflect. It was designed to absorb and conduct the primal elemental power of the Nexus. The weapons they carried were not mere tools of war, but conduits of the living elements. Their bone-white blades and rune staves, etched deeply with futhark, could, with a single strike, instantly weld themselves to a target in crystalline ice, freezing a foe's armor solid. Alternatively, they could shatter a foe with instantaneous, petrified force, turning flesh and bone to dust. Their combat style was heavy, predictable, and absolutely unyielding, reflecting the immovable nature of fate. They would summon massive, perfectly angled stone walls or thick, layered shields of ice to rigidly partition the battlefield, then advance into close quarters, each blow delivered with the cold certainty of an executioner. Their elemental skill was seamless, drawn from the earth itself. The Vulva Guardians carried amulets of carved wood and stone that allowed them to summon Fylgja, spectral animal companions, the ghosts of wolves and bears, to act as unseen sentinels and battle companions, binding the raw spirit of the ancient woods to their defense. These spectral beasts provided not only defense, but a chilling psychological weight, pressing the enemy with the combined word of the Covenant and the wilderness. In the center of the hall, where the low, constant runic thrumming was a physical pressure against the eardrums, High Vulva Urther stood before a massive sculpture of the World Tree, her gaze penetrating the very branches of destiny. The law demands balance, even in the grave, Urther pronounced, her words glowing in the cold air with the conviction of prophecy. But their rigid perfection refuses to turn to ash. They are a wound that cannot heal because it will not close. It needs the sharp hand of decay. The enemy's flaw was not strength, but their hubris in seeking stagnant perfection. A refusal of the natural cycle that mandates rot must precede growth. 2. Operative 1. Surtr. The anti-order Pyre. The cold, sterile air of the hall shattered with the intrusion of pure, devastating heat. Surtr did not walk. He was a phenomenon, a walking fragment of the primordial fire realm. His skin was scorched, shifting obsidian and cooled lava, and his molten, silver-bright armor hissed like a living thing as it violently repelled the ambient frost, creating an immediate, visible boundary between the Covenant's cold law and the chaos he represented. He was the counter-element made flesh, chaos wielded in the service of absolute order. His presence manifested as the Muspelheim's rage, a heat so corrosive it was visible as a shimmering, distorting haze, hot enough to taste like singed metal and sulfur on the tongue. This thermal aura was not a byproduct of his power, but the power itself. His voice was a low, guttural rumble that caused the very air to vibrate and the hall's crystalline frost to crackle, sounding like the core of a volcano moments before eruption. Their structure is one that refuses the ash, Surtr growled, a cynical, primal fatalism in his tone that belied his fiery nature. It is not a true stream. It is a lie of perfection built upon the refusal to die. Surtr was the ultimate thermal agent of necessary decay. His power was the intentional release of uncontrolled, chaotic heat, designed not to burn life, but to inflict structural failure upon systems of rigidity. He didn't merely melt iron or alloy. He scorched the hidden patterns that held the enemy's crystalline and technological architectures together. His very fire attacked the underlying logic of their existence. His strategic role was absolute. He was deployed to inject chaotic thermal stress into the enemy's flawless conduits, to incinerate their instruments of stasis into molten slag, and create the necessary decay for the cycle to resume. In a terrifying paradox known only to the High Vulva, his ability to destroy was matched by his capacity to preserve the law. He could unleash a wave of intense, consuming heat, burning the enemy into ashes, then immediately channel the excess thermal energy into a healing, sustaining warmth for his Covenant allies, ensuring the chaos he created could be strategically leveraged for the greater law. Go and purify their rigid lie, Urther commanded, the Futhark runes of her words burning away the frost near the floor. Let the smoldering ruins remind them, Surtr, of the fate of all things that refuse the grave. Chapter 3. The Unstable Current, Ingrid Stormfang. The storm within the sanctuary. The Hall of Word was a monument to stillness, its colossal stone and ice walls absorbing every whisper, leaving only the faint cold pressure of the low runic hum. The air in this sanctum was meant to be still, yet in a quiet corner of the chamber, the atmosphere was tearing itself apart, the word threads snapping with unseen violence. Ingrid, Stormfang Watersong stood, and the very air around her hissed and snapped with unseen, raw electrical energy. Her presence was a beautiful, chaotic contradiction to the Covenant's perfect, immutable order, a necessary turbulence in the face of stagnation. Her power was the elemental discord within a single body. She was water, fluid, adaptable, and flexible in temperament, mirroring the ever-changing oceans that bore the Vikings. But her core was the uncontrolled, raw kinetic force of lightning, the very energy that smashes ships and splinters trees. This dichotomy was her strength. She was the one who could be trusted with the element of unpredictability, for the High Volva knew that only chaos could truly dismantle chaos. The vision of the High Volva. High Volva Uther approached with a slowness that defied the rapid decay of time, moving with the glacial patience of fate. She held a temporal geode, a fist-sized crystal that stored a single warped image of a vital nexus moment, examining the fragile, fractured light trapped within its depths. The time leeches move in erratic bursts, Ingrid, Uther stated, her cadence fatalistic and stoic. They are pure chaos, unplanned consumption of what is not yet earned. They do not fear the hammer blow, for they are never there to meet it. The parasites were a mockery of the cycle, attempting to steal the harvest without enduring the planting. Ingrid's voice was a melodic, flowing counterpoint to the hissing static that followed her every breath, like waves breaking over charged stone. But they fear the deep freeze, Volva. The speed of the temporal shift is their strength, yes, but it also makes their presence brittle, a lie of movement. My current shatters their coherence. It binds them to a single moment in time, where they can be destroyed, too. Anti-time doctrine, the electrical counter. Ingrid's assignment was time leech neutralization. These temporal aggressors relied on fast, unstable time skips, an unpredictable blurring of movement that made them untouchable. This non-linear speed was their vulnerability, for to exist in two moments at once is to be weak in both. Her true mastery was in elemental ranged attacks. She raised her hands, and the hissing air condensed instantly, not into water, but into brilliant, crackling electrobolts, bolts of concentrated lightning that would not just burn, but deliver a systemic shock designed to seize the leech's erratic movements. The shock was specifically tuned to instantly shatter the temporal flux that protected them, wrenching them back into the linear, predictable flow of the present moment where they could be slain. Tactically, she was a master of environmental disruption. She conjured quick, wide water traps on the floor, sudden, mirror-smooth pools that, a moment later, she would electrify, creating a massive, invisible conductive snare. This physical snare would instantly deny the time leeches the very stuttering speed they relied on for combat. Furthermore, she could draw the static charge from the very air, forming a tight cage of ozone and electric tension that suffocated the parasites' ability to initiate their shifts, forcing them into a brutal, face-to-face confrontation. Her methodology was simple. Make the battlefield predictable so the enemy can be executed. 3. The familial anchor, the weight of knowledge. The High Volva motioned to a polished section of the hall's stone wall. The deep strength of the flow within the stone shimmered, forming a three-dimensional living image. A simple Viking family gathered around a carved table in a remote Germanic village, a place untouched by the current wars. This was the burden of Inengard, what they fought to protect. Uther's voice was soft, heavy with duty. The threads of Midgard are thin. Your family speaks of the chaos. The father, an elderly rune master, spoke from the flowing image, his brow furrowed with ancient wisdom. The storms are wrong this year. The sea itself seems to forget its tide. It is the unstable time shift corrupting the very rhythm of the world. The flow of the seasons is broken, the brother and young apprentice added, with a flash of youthful indignation. The Legion remnants are just as greedy as the Violet Guard. They want the same things as our enemies, uncontrolled power. They are all blind to the necessary cost of their war. The mother, a local healer Volva, looked directly out of the image, her expression resolute and firm. The Light faction promises a cure, but their actions are too predictable, too slow. They are too blind to accept the necessity of decay, entropy. Only Jotunsvip is free enough to fight the chaos with chaos. Only those who wield the storm can silence the storm. Ingrid's eyes tightened on the image of her mother, the woman who had first taught her to fear and then to master the lighting in her own hands. She was the chaos they spoke of, the unstable current wielded by the absolute law of the Covenant. Her power gave her a unique, terrifying cosmic awareness of the stakes that no ordinary person could bear, the intimate knowledge of how close the world was to unraveling. "The threat is clear," Ingrid stated, her voice regaining its low, powerful hum like a transformer about to discharge. "The time leeches seek to scavenge on the warring factions in the deep scar zones, fattening themselves on wasted time. I will turn the air into pure electrical agony and shatter their flow into non-existence, returning their stolen time to the wellspring." Urther nodded, the absolute certainty of fate in her gaze. "Do it. Disrupt the unnatural flow, for the inexorable cycle demands a storm fang." Chapter 4. The Hammer, the Fury, and the Flaw. Operative 3, Skuld, the Flaw Finder. The transition from the world route was not a journey, but a violation, a violent rupture through the Veil of Worlds. Skuld, the technical saboteur, was the first to stabilize. Her mind, a cold, perfect blade focused on the integrity of the weave, found purchase in the unstable, sickening air. She was the Flaw Finder made flesh, a precision operative whose touch could unravel the deep rune of creation. Her power was subtle, but terminal, a true unmaking. When she touched a weapon or a piece of armor, the Futhark runes etched onto its surface would not explode. They would simply blister, corrode, and crumble into gray dust, instantly rendering the item useless. Her focus was never the heat of battle, but the hidden architecture of the enemy's strength. She did not fight the war head-on. She attacked the underlying pattern of making within the enemy's arsenal, ensuring every battle they fought was with broken tools and failing power. She was the stealth specialist who targeted the enemy's blueprints, destroying the idea of the weapon before it could be wielded. Her skill was the law applied to structure. If the structure is flawed, the consequence must be decay. 2. The Dark Realm, Ascending Action. The three operatives, Ragnar, the Hammer, Vitki, the Fury, and Skuld, the Knife, landed hard on gritty, cold earth. The transition had been brutal, leaving a metallic taste of ozone on their tongues. The air here stank of despair, a sickly odor of decay and spent power, clinging to them like grave shroud. This was a land perpetually stalled outside the cycle, a failed attempt at reality. The sky was a permanent, bruised gray and sickly green, never bright, and the ground beneath their boots was crumbling dust, the physical debris of a failed reality where growth had ceased and only dust remained. Ragnar shook his massive shoulders, the immense earth's might thrumming through his arms like heavy, taut wire, attempting to find purchase in the sterile soil. "The earth is sick here," Ragnar drawled, his voice a deep, guttural sound, heavy with the weight of the granite he commanded. "It feels like old dust and 1,000 broken promises. The shadow cores are deeper in this decay, like maggots in a wound." Their goal was simple, yet fraught with danger. Obtain the elusive shadow cores, artifacts of immense, unstable power destined to be forged into weapons necessary for the coming Ragnarok. Vitki was next, the Fury agent, his raging elemental energy a subtle pressure against the Dark Realm's suffocating atmosphere, a restless wind contained in a man's body. "The wind tastes of stagnation," Vitki hissed, sharp and quick, his impatience a palpable energy. "This place is stuck fast in its own death. We need a catalyst." A shout of pure rage to wake it up and move the word. He was about to unleash a burst of his kinetic fury, a deliberate violation of the stillness, when Skuld stopped him. Her hand was cold and precise on his massive forearm. Her voice was a low, dry whisper, barely audible above the ringing silence of the decay. "Be silent, Rage. I detect a glitch, anomalies of time's confusion, and energy's discord. We are not alone, and they have already begun their ill work." The presence she sensed was not kinetic strength, but a corruption of the fabric itself. 3. Collision, the unholy trinity. The rising action slammed into them without warning, not with a roar, but with a sickening crunch. Ahead, a small, defenseless village of farmers lay under a brutal assault, its inhabitants too frail to fight the cosmic destruction. 3 terrifying figures were at the center of the carnage, their combined Utengard's fury tearing the village apart for sport. Lux, the decay general, was a hulking mass, his aura a blinding black hole shimmer of pure terminal destruction that sucked the light and hope from the air. He moved in a state of primal, self-consuming rage, a walking consequence of unmanaged entropy. Echo, the distorted doll, glided nearby, a figure of unsettlingly beautiful porcelain, whose physical presence was almost an afterthought. Her power was a cacophony of faint, layered whispers that followed her like a ghostly entourage, trapping the villagers' minds in personalized mental hells built from their deepest unspoken fears and regrets. Roxy, the diva of destruction, was the kinetic engine, the architect of physical violence. A pulsating, crackling aura of electric pink and purple surrounded her. She wasn't just hitting the homes, she was unleashing strikes that compromised the deep ruin of the stone and timber, causing the brittle buildings to shatter instantly. She found the weakness in the material's pattern of the stone, ensuring its immediate, total collapse. Ragnar saw the homes, built with such care and rootedness in the earth, dissolving under the assault. The works of the rigid ones are not the only things that are brittle against the hammer, Ragnar thundered, his voice a promise of heavy retribution. He slammed his massive fist into the crumbling ground, channeling the disciplinary force of the deep earth. The dark realm roared in response to the injection of law, and a massive stone golem, heavy with the sheer weight of the foundation, erupted from the gritty earth to confront Flux. Vitki was already shaking with the effort of containment, his internal wind a building whirlwind of fury. Rage will shatter their time trickery, Vitki screamed, his eyes wild with contained kinetic power. Fury is the only law they will understand here. For the cycle, the three agents of law were now irrevocably committed to a hopeless battle against three agents of cosmic destruction, the clash of absolute order against absolute entropy. This chapter ends right as the fight begins. Chapter 5. The Tension Cascade, the Unholy Reckoning. I, Roxy, the Unmaker's Analysis. Roxy, the Diva of Destruction. Look, I'm not saying these Vikings are good. I'm saying they are aggressively playing. The big one, Ragnar, brought the weight of a damn mountain, right? But he's predictable. One axis of attack. Blunt force. I watched him summon that stone golem, and I just laughed. Oh, honey, don't bring a rock to a digital demolition derby, I yelled, my voice a siren over the screaming villagers. The Vikings were stuck in first-order physics, brute-forcing problems. I didn't fight his strength. I fought his intention. I raised my hands, the pulsating electric pink and purple energy surging. I didn't hit him, I hit the idea of him. My energy compromised the air's structure just in front of his axe. The focused shockwave of my power delivered a precise kinetic shunt. The blow lost 90% of its force. The effort Ragnar expended became wasted heat. The axe still hit, but it felt like slamming a foam brick. The law of conservation of mass had been momentarily mocked. Then the shadow tried it, the tiny silent one, Scold. I felt a cold, surgical chill on my wrist. Not physical pain, but a precise, sickening sensation where my inner power source connects to my body. It was a digital violation, a sliver of grammar trying to unwrite my existence, a sabotage attempt on my fundamental code. She wasn't attacking my armor, she was attacking my integrity. A sudden, high-pitched whine of static ripped through my internal audio feed. The structural language holding my metallic hand together was trying to decay and crumble. A small section of my forearm lost its sheen, turning instantly to gray, crumbling dust. The axiomatic degradation was real. A cold, surgical threat that pierced my defense. What the actual FK is this low-budget bullsh? I snapped, pulling my arm back and channeling a short burst of thermal energy to scorch the corruption away. You attack my meaning? My power is chaos by design, you boring saboteur. You can't unmake a force you can't categorize. You can only dismantle what you can define, and I am the definition of variable. The effort to shake off the axiomatic touch left her slightly depleted, her focus momentarily diverted from the greater threat. She vanished into the dark realm shadows. Pathetic, a brilliant tactic, wasted on a simple defense. 2. Flux, the obliterator's feast. Flux, the decayed general of doom. The terminal rage was a sweet, blinding thing. Ragnar was mine. The big one fought with Earth's heavy, predictable law, and I am the essence of decay. Everything he built, I unmade. He was strong, but his strength was just more fuel for the void inside me. His very effort to enforce the law accelerated his own ruin. Nothing is sustained. Your law is a lie, I bellowed, the sound tearing at the villagers' sanity, a low, guttural roar of mass extinction. My attack was not force. It was negation. Every time Ragnar moved, he created a counterforce, and my presence consumed that energy. Ragnar's energy was loud, a predictable thrum of kinetic might. My power, a blinding black hole shimmer just absorbed it, turning his defensive effort into my offensive fuel. His axe hit my shoulder, and the dread of his blow, the fear of a weapon's failure, only fed the absolute malice inside me. I was getting stronger with every one of his predictable, heavy strikes. The stone golem is dust. He can only sustain matter for moments, Echo whispered in my shared frequency, her words like fine, cold glass. Focus your consumption on the rage agent. His emotion is unstable fuel. The other one, Vitki, was trying to go full berserker. I saw the turbulent wind of his anger gather, a volatile storm designed to break formations. He was a beacon of pure, raw kinetic force, a prize ripe for psychological demolition. Scream all you want, little rage Viking. Your fury is predictable. It is a simple, straight-line equation. I roared, batting Ragnar's shield away like a toy, and then delivering a wave of focused entropy. This wave didn't hurt Vitki physically. It attacked his power source, inflicting an overwhelming sense of futility. I didn't need to fight Vitki's body. Echo was already inside his skull, cleaning the glass. A cold term for the surgical dismantling of his morale. She was turning his strength into a weapon against himself. Ragnar was my final course. I slammed my massive, energy-enhanced fist into Ragnar's chest. I didn't kill him with blunt force. I delivered the terminal certainty of his end, inflicting an irreversible decay of will. It was the philosophical strike. He could not win because existence itself dictated his failure. He dropped, utterly broken, not by pain, but by the cold, absolute truth of his own defeat. 3. Echo, the doll's psychological snare. Echo, the distorted doll. The little rage agent, Vitki, was so fragile. He was so loud. His power was a simple trap. Rage equals strength. But rage is just emotion. And emotion is my canvas. It is the easiest flaw to exploit in the entire flow. I glided past the crumbling village homes, my porcelain form unmarred by the physical fight. I didn't use my hands. I used my voice. A chilling, layered whisper that spoke only to the cracks in his mind, wrapping itself around his deepest, most buried failures. Silly boy, I cooed, the sound echoing within the confines of his own skull. You think this rage is yours? It's just a shattered mirror. Look closer. Do you see the fear? The failure to protect your own kin? I forced the very wind of his rage, the kinetic field that should have protected him, to reflect his deepest shame back at him. The psychic blow was sudden and devastating, turning his augmenting power into pure, paralyzing self-doubt. His augmented strength vanished, leaving him gasping for air, crushed by the weight of his own word. He had become a simple Viking again, vulnerable and terrified. The 3 Covenant agents were done. Their unity was broken. Ragnar was crushed by Flux's decay. Vitki was a gasping puppet in my hands. And Skuld had wasted her one surgical shot at Roxy. I drifted toward the downed Viking, satisfied. The mission was secured. The artifacts would be ours. V cliffhanger, total deconstruction. Roxy, the diva of destruction. Look at this mess. Absolute trash. This failed attempt at order is pathetic. Flux, finish the big one. Make it messy. Echo, turn the rage boy into a decorative doll for the dark realm. I walked up to Ragnar and kicked his axe away, enjoying the sound of its clatter on the sterile, decaying stone. I felt my systems run a final scan. A cold, digital certainty. The target is non-viable. The ultimate destruction protocol is now mandatory. I needed to ensure this failure was permanent, a monument to the defeat of the cycle. You came for the orbs, I said, bending low, letting my voice drop to a dangerous, intimate snarl. I don't give a flying FK about your stupid cycle, but I love a good show to finish the set, and your death will be the final punchline. I raised both hands, the raw destructive force surging into a focused beam of electric pink destruction. The energy was so bright it momentarily pierced the sickly green sky. Roxy, total deconstruction is not a request, it's a F-King guarantee. Bye-bye. Welcome to the Ash. The beam shot out, a searing line of pure kinetic negation, aimed directly at Ragnar's face. The dark realm held its breath. Obliteration was 1 inch away. The silence before the end was heavier than all of Ragnar's earth kinetic power combined. Chapter 6, The Slayflow Queen, which provides the thrilling resolution to Roxy's near-fatal attack on Ragnar. Chapter 6, The Slayflow Queen, Perspective, Ragnar the Hammer Stonebeard, I. The weight of the world, the final, inevitable punch from Flux hit me not like a man's fist, but like the earth itself had turned against me. He was the embodiment of all decay, the void of the grave made manifest. My stone-hard armor screamed as it dissolved from my body. The power in my veins sucked into the blinding, light-devouring void that shimmered around him. It was a violation deeper than pain, It was the unmaking of my very foundation. I lay there, gasping, the smell of acrid ozone and the stale odor of death choking me. The deep thrum of my elemental connection to the earth had ceased. I saw Echo, the distorted doll, her unsettlingly beautiful face fixed in that predatory smile. She had Vitki on his knees, the furious wind inside him broken by her chilling whispers, words that spoke only to the hidden cracks in his mind, turning his kinetic surge into a paralysis of self-doubt. The shame of being brought low by a mind trick was a cold axe blow to my warrior's pride. Then I saw Roxy, the diva of destruction. Her raging energy, a beam of electric pink and purple, screamed toward my face. She was going to turn me into ash. Ensuring my return to the cycle was a violent obliteration rather than a warrior's death. Roxy, her voice a cynical siren. Time to turn you into dust, Viking. Bye-bye. There was no time to summon a stone shield. I couldn't even lift my axe. My strength was an empty, spiritless shell. All that remained was the acceptance of the word. The beam hit me, too. The dissonance engine, Aisha Inferno's intervention. But it didn't hit me. Not fully. The air shrieked with a chaotic, rhythmic pulse. A sound that was pure, violent, beautiful energy. A force of pure, pounding, rhythmic shockwave. A dissonance engine slammed into Roxy's destructive beam, causing it to splinter into harmless static and gray dust. It was the sound of 1,000 drums beating out of step. A figure landed between us, a blinding flash of electric pink, neon green, and jagged armored plates, disrupting the perfect gloom of the dark realm. It was Aisha Inferno, the Slayflow Queen. Her gold chains whined, instantly matching the color and pulse of Roxy's attack, but in an unpredictable cadence. Aisha Inferno, her voice a rapid-fire rhyme that turned speech into a kinetic pulse. Well, look who fell out of the sky and landed whack. You're nothing but dissonance, a terrible setback, Roxy faltered. Not from fear, but from surprise. Her calculated chaos was being utterly overpowered by a force of unholy mirth and unpredictable rhythm. Aisha's power was a deliberate violation of the very idea of a pattern, and the Trinity's rigid destructive logic could not compute the unexpected beat. Roxy, her sarcasm failing, the logic trap broken. The FK are you? Some kink-shamed harlequin? This is not your stage. Aisha Inferno. This is my pit, B*TCH. Mosh pit distortion is going to make you pay the toll. And I don't pay for ugliness. Aisha generated a localized rhythmic force field, a field of pure sonic instability. The dark realm vibrated violently under the invasive rhythm. Flux roared in disorientation. His vast consuming power cracked under the uncontrolled rhythmic stress. The entropy he commanded hated the organized dissonance. The Trinity was no longer in control, their perfectly executed ambush shattered by a musical contradiction. 3. The Flawfinder's cold touch. While the Trinity was busy fighting a chaotic force they couldn't calculate, the real work began. Skuld, the technical saboteur, had not been idle. She glided past the still-dazed Vitki, a shadow in the chaos. Her focus was absolute. Flaw degradation was her only mantra. She didn't waste power attacking the newly arrived foe. She attacked the shadow cores, the mission objective. She threw 3 small bone fragments at the artifacts Roxy had secured. The fragments clung, immediately initiating a structural poison. This was not fire or ice, but a terminal logical failure. The smooth, perfect surfaces of the shadow cores physically deteriorated and crumbled, transforming the powerful artifacts into useless powder. They could no longer be used as fuel to sustain the Dark Realm's war against the cycle. Skuld's purpose was upheld. If she can't win the fight, the enemy can't win the war. The mission was technically a failure for the Covenant. They didn't retrieve the orbs, but a strategic triumph. They were successfully neutralized. IV. The unholy retreat and Ragnar's cold assessment. Roxy, her voice a gasping snarl of pure rage. My F-King shadow cores. That freak ruined them. The destruction of the artifacts was the trigger. The Trinity turned their focus from the Vikings to the unpredictable shadow of Aisha. Flux, a terminal roar. We withdraw. The decay is not worth the cost of the feast. Flux unleashed a localized wave of suffocating dread, a cold psychic blanket that choked the air and temporarily suppressed Aisha's rhythmic output. Echo glided backward, her unblinking eyes fixed on Skuld with pure, silent malice, the only one who understood the depth of the Flawfinder's sabotage. Roxy blasted a final pulse at Aisha's feet, then turned and vanished into a ripple in the air. Aisha smiled, her painted grin wide. Aisha Inferno. The B*TCH is back. Dissonance won. The Dark Realm settled. The villagers were safe. The Shadow Cores were destroyed. The Viking heroes had failed their retrieval mission. But the weird of the Covenant had been served by other hands. Ragnar pushed himself up, tasting the iron tang of blood and the shame of failure. He saw Vitki slowly pulling his strength back together, the memory of his self-doubt still a sharp, lingering pain. Vitki, the Fury agent, who wielded uncontrolled battle rage as a weapon, was always vulnerable to the psychic counter, for his own fear was the only thing capable of turning his immense kinetic power inward. The Covenant had survived, proving that even in defeat, the law finds a way. The Inexorable Cycle remained intact, saved by the very chaos they sometimes had to unleash to enforce order. We've reached the final chapter,